Hello everyone and welcome back to episode number 7. Today we've got a very special guest. Dun 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 dun! My dad! Yes, today we've got my dad, Dean Wallace, on the show, and before you think, hang on a second Ben, have you run out of guests? A little bit, but more importantly, he's got experience in amateur dramatics. Yes, so he's performed a lot in amateur dramatics over the past 14 years. He's acted and co-directed in lots of full plays, one-act plays. He's performed locally and in larger theatres. He was the chairman of his local group, the Longton Players, for a long time. He's won awards for his acting role in the One-Act Play Festival, and for writing, producing, co-directing, and acting in his own rendition of Sherlock Holmes. So we're going to talk a little bit about his experience on stage, as well as learn a little bit more about amateur dramatics, whether it's a thriving or dying art, what are the benefits of amateur dramatics, and how you can get into amateur dramatics and not just acting. Also, what he did on stage when he forgot his lines. So we've got a very, very cool episode lined up today. I'm sure you'll enjoy it and listening to my dad talk. And remember, this podcast is a fundraiser for Mind. Please, if you'd like to give to them, go to justgiving.com/fundraising/Ben's Learning Lounge. One more time, that's justgiving.com/fundraising/Ben's Learning Lounge. It's an absolutely great service, provides a lot of help for a lot of people around the country, and I couldn't recommend them more. Now, onto the show. Welcome to Ben's Learning Lounge. I'm now here with Dean, or my dad as I know him. Great to have you here, my dad.
Hi, yeah, it's great to be here, Ben.
Obviously, we're going to be talking a bit about amateur dramatics. And I think one of the first things I want to get out the way is, what actually is amateur dramatics?
Well, it's, I guess, when we think of actors and we think of, movies and the sort of media that they're involved in, most of those people are paid professionals, so they do that for a living. Amateur stuff, amateur acting, like any amateur endeavour, is something which is done normally on a non-paid basis, and generally people do it because of a deep interest they've got in a particular thing, and they do it alongside or other than their sort of main occupation. So I guess that's the difference between amateur and professional. Amateur actually means, somebody told me, I don't know whether this is true or not, but somebody told me that the word amateur is from I think it's derived from the Latin or something, and it means for the love of it. So do it for the love of it.
So not to be confused with bad.
No, not to be confused. Although some amateur stuff is poor.
Well, what are the sort of benefits for people going to actually watch amateur dramatics than just a professional performance? I mean, the first things first, I can imagine it'd be cheaper, right?
Yeah, it is cheaper. So the amateur dramatics company that I'm part of, which is called the Longton Players, we charge, we watch £7, I think it's called, so it's like £8 ticket now. So £8, it's not an awful lot really to pay for what is an evening's entertainment, and we'll normally have a bar on, or there'll be a raffle there, and you get a programme for that price, and you might even get a free drink depending on what we happen to be, what the sort of evening that we happen to be structuring it around. So yeah, it's cheaper. And in terms of the benefits of going along to see it, well, let's face it, it's people who go to these sorts of productions will probably be aware or have friends or connections or associations to the group and to the audience that are going to see the group. So it's kind of friendly and cozy, and because of the size of the spaces as well. I mean, generally you're not looking at getting more than about 140 people in a typical amateur dramatics venue. Then it's quite intimate too. So people get that community feel. They get that connection with the people in the audience. There's obviously a connection and association with if they know anybody that's in the production. And I think it's just generally good for the community too. It's a good community activity that does help to bring the community together.
I think if I had to add anything to that as well, perhaps a benefit of amateur dramatics, because obviously I've seen you perform a few times in the past few years and been a part of a couple of things myself. But I've had to dodge those rotten eggs, Ben. Yeah, I definitely wasn't aiming for you. Yeah, no, but there's perhaps also another interest within it, is that there's that sort of ability to maybe be a little bit more riskier when it comes to amateur dramatics. I mean, there's a lot less money to lose if the performance goes wrong, right? I mean, it also gives people a chance. I mean, you've performed your Sherlock Holmes thing before, which, I believe ended up winning some kind of award. And perhaps those opportunities wouldn't be available, or perhaps those risks wouldn't be as explored on the big stage.
Yeah, I completely. So, and you've hit on a really important point there. So one of the benefits. Well, first of all, you're absolutely right in terms of the risk and the financial outlay and things like that. Normally, our dramatic societies have got, their own budget. It generally wouldn't be more than a few £1,000s in the associations or in the group's budget at any one time. And to put on a production can range from sort of £1,000 up to about £5,000, depending on the scale of the production generally in amateur dramatic venues. So it's not such a risk because it's not a huge outlay, and ticket sales normally recoup at least twice as much as the outlay spent per any production. And that, I guess, is even with an average audience numbers. That's not necessarily with full houses. So the financial outlay is not so great, but a real benefit and a real advantage, which you've just touched on there, I guess, is the in some ways, I guess, is the scope for actors and indeed for directors and for people who are interested in writing to get their stuff on stage, to make it tangible and to make it real. So in my case, I guess I've done a bit of writing on my view. We can maybe talk about that further down the interview. In terms of the performing itself, I've been lucky enough to be, because I've been involved for about 12 years in amateur dramatics, I've been lucky enough to play prominent parts or lead parts in a number of different plays. So, and these are opportunities that I would just never have gotten really. If I'd been a professional actor, I'd be scraping around trying to get, parts in adverts maybe, or very small parts in maybe Hollyoaks or Coronation Street or whatever it can, so generally actors at the lower tier, they tend to, most actors, this is by the way, because only a very small percentage of the massive actors are actually in the sort of top tier and generally tend to get the roles. So the other actors, they kind of get the scraps. They get a line here, an appearance there, an advert maybe once a year, a bit of voiceover work or whatever now and again. So for those people, or in my opinion, those people who are professional and who are sort of scraping by and trying to be diligent and sticking to it and hoping one day that their break will come, which in many cases it really never does. But those people, I think, must be terribly frustrated and unfulfilled, because they will have gone into acting primarily, you would think, because they enjoy and they want to be able to create characters and create personas and to enjoy playing different parts and all of these sorts of things. But in actuality, that doesn't end up being the case if they commit themselves to the professional route and they're a lower tier actor. So in amateur dramatics, you have the opportunity, much smaller audiences and what have you, but just talked about the coziness and the intimacy and the community feel. So it's quite a nice sort of comfortable environment. But there's a huge opportunity to get into really meaty roles, things that you would never or have an extremely slim chance of being involved in if you weren't in amateur dramatics. And certainly I've been able to exploit those opportunities, in the stuff that I've done, and I've really, really enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, I've seen as well that you've played a couple of Yorkshiremen before. I think you played a couple of Scousers. There is that range available, when it comes to amateur dramatics. In your own personal case, would you say how much of it is finding opportunities to be someone else entirely?
What you mean in terms of the pool of amateur dramatics, or the?
Well, I mean, sort of like, do you try and stick to a similar character than you've done before personally, or do you try and find an active opportunity to be someone else entirely that you've never been into before?
I see. Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Actually, the different sort of actors do it in different ways. So there are what you call character actors, and then there's actors that rely basically on their own persona, and they just go through different versions of or they apply the persona to different characters. So if you think about professional actors, you might think about, I don't know, let's say, I was going to say John Wayne, but I don't think that your audience, though the people listen to this, will know who he is.
No, I think you're a little bit out of date.
So some of the classic actors, like I don't know, maybe Tom Cruise then, or maybe
he's a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Roger Moore. They might have heard of Roger Moore. He was James
Yeah.
Bond a few decades ago.
It's okay.
So the thing is, I don't know that many actors, that many contemporary actors, do I? Because I'm an old-fashioned kind of a person. Oh, I know the faces, but I might not know the
Yeah.
names. But anyway, what I'm saying is that there are some people who rely on the personalities, and they are hired for the personalities because audiences like
The big example, at least I can think
personalities.
of, if I'm thinking on the right lines here, is someone like Johnny Depp.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Johnny Depp, somebody like that, somebody who has got a distinctive, his own distinctive character and applies that character to different situations. Or who's that guy in Meet the Fockers? Not Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, yeah. Adam Sandler as well, though, actually.
Adam Sandler, and there's a guy who plays Elf. Who's that guy?
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell, I think he does the same sort of. So there's a plethora of actors who kind of do that sort of thing, but then there's character actors, and character actors are the sort of actors that really like to be different characters with each different project that they're involved in, whether it be a TV series or a film or whatever it is. And I think for myself, I'm more of a character actor because I enjoy playing those different parts, playing different characters, different people, people from different regions, different countries, different accents, different perspectives. So for me, that's a really enjoyable part, and it's interesting getting ready for a part like that because, of course, you always remember when you're doing amateur dramatics that people are, might only be £8, but £8's £8 at the end of the day, and so people are paying good money to come and see you. So you want to do everything possible within your power to make that a credible and enjoyable and entertaining performance. So for me, a big part of that is making sure that whatever character I'm playing, that it comes across as convincing and as credible and as entertaining as it possibly can do. So I put a lot of time in the preparation, not just learning the lines, but in the preparation of the character as well.
If you're putting all that preparation in and you've been doing it for a few years, do you still get stage fright before a show, or do you still get the nerves at least?
Yeah, well, I've never really had stage fright really, because I think stage fright is like that's like an acute and an extreme reaction, isn't it? And I've known people who have had that. And certainly, I've been exceptionally nervous at times. But in terms of nowadays, I get nervous. You get anxious. You're always a bit anxious about the performance and really critically about whether you're going to be able to remember your lines. Essentially, now there was one time, by the way, where I did actually forget my lines, and it was in a play called When We Are Married. And I was playing a Yorkshireman. So I was like 31 at the time. This was about 12 years ago, or 11 years ago. I was playing this Yorkshireman, and he was supposed to be in his 60s, and so I had to grow up like a bushy sort of beard for it. And try to look like somebody who's considerably older than me, which, if you've seen, well, you know about my youthful look, so it was pretty difficult for me to you know what I mean? Took a lot.
Yeah, you wouldn't think with the fact that you're bringing up Roger Moore as the most recent example you had, you wouldn't believe that you're in your 40s.
I am, but I've got a baby face and I look more like 24 than 44. But anyway.
All right.
So it took a great feat of makeup and things to try to get me looking considerably older than I was. But anyway, managed to do that. I was playing this Yorkshire character. And in part of it, he gives quite a few speeches in this play. But in part of it, he's giving one particular speech, and his wife's on stage with him. And I can't remember what he's saying to his wife. It was quite a long time ago, but it was quite a profoundish sort of thing as well. And anyway, I was saying the lines. Well, I was acting the part rather than saying the lines. And then at one point, when I was speaking, I thought. Goodness me, I don't know what I've got to say next. I don't know what's coming up next. So I was thinking this as I was simultaneously saying the lines that I did know, but I knew that in a few seconds I didn't know what the next lines were. I just couldn't grab them from the kind of fog of my mind, which did seem to sort of fog over. So and I remember when I got to that, I just hoped that when I got to the point where I had to say it, that my memory would kick in, my reflexes would kick in, and I would just say it. And but anyway, I got to the point, and I still didn't know the lines. I forgot.
Oh no.
So it was a terrible feeling. It really was, because
Yeah,
I
because
felt
you got all the eyes on you.
yeah, you have, yeah. All those people all sitting there watching you expectant. So there was a little bit of a pause for maybe a second or two, not much at all. But then I just carried on, and I just carried on with anything. Like, I was trying to knit things together from the kind of things that the guy had said previously, or might say further on in the play, or the same things in the same sort of accent, and all these sorts of things.
You're just sort of improvising on the spot.
Yeah, you got to improvise on the spot. But it was terrible, because although I kept saying stuff which was good, I knew, I was thinking, am I ever going to be able to get back to the lines I should be speaking? Because if I can't, what's going to happen to the rest of the play?
Of course.
Nobody knows when to come in and they're on their cue, or when I've got to leave, or anything like that. I could mess up the whole story. I could jump ahead 5 pages. So, and also physically as well. Like, I remember horrible sick feeling in my stomach, and there's that feeling about just wanting to kind of feeling small and things, and wanting the stage to sort of swallow you up, and then you just sweat starting to glisten on your brow.
I can imagine too, because all these things happen. It feels, I suppose it would feel on stage like it's 10 minutes when really it's just a few seconds, right?
Just a few seconds, yeah. So I was lucky, because eventually, after all my mumbling and not mumbling and fumbling, that does myself a disservice. But after my vaguely credible improvisation, spiel, yeah, I managed to get back to where I should be. And when I did remember the line, I was so happy. Have you seen Back to the Future, Ben?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so I was so happy. So do you remember there was a scene there was Michael J. Fox, and he's looking at he's playing the guitar on stage, and there's a picture of him with his family or something on the guitar, and because of this time element that's involved in this film, he was sort of fading out. He was fading out because he thought he died or something. And as he was fading out, he gets weaker and weaker, and he's kind of leaning over with the guitar and starting to get more transparent, and obviously, he's about to sort of fade away. And then something happens, and the picture just appears straight away, nice and clear and crisp, and he kind of jumps up, and he's there back again. The energy's back in the room, and that's exactly how I felt.
Talk about putting the word dramatic in amateur dramatics.
I know, but that's honestly that was how I felt. It's like, oh goodness me, thank God for that.
On that sort of level though, because we're talking about, obviously when you're on stage, you got all these people looking at you. You can make mistakes, and you have to improvise. Is that sort of a big part of being on stage? I mean, I know you have the scripts and things, but how often does improv come into your performance?
Well, it doesn't come in that often, because amateur dramatic productions are normally done over maybe 4 to 6 nights. So what I'm saying is that they're not long runs. If you go to theatre productions, even when they move around and things, they've normally been going for, or they aim to play for as long as possible. So sometimes you've got actors that have played in plays for like hundreds of times. So those actors, they know what their lines are. They just know them. Just in the fibre of the beings. They've not even got to remember them or anything anymore. So that means that they are more confident in what they're saying, of course. And quite often, in the case of, there was a guy called Jeremy Brett, and he played Sherlock Holmes, which is one of my favourite characters back in the 80s and early 90s. But he did a play as well, a Sherlock Holmes play, and I was reading a book in which a fellow actor said that sometimes, Jeremy, after many performances, he got bored. He'd get bored, and he'd just go off on tangents in speeches, saying things that just weren't in the script, and the other guy would be just like, thinking, what the hell is he doing? And he'd just be kind of trying to react to what Jeremy was saying and just trying to go along with it. But sometimes he'd just go completely in a different direction. So he was obviously improvising there, and he was improvising for his own amusement, and also there's a bit of a challenge about improvising as well, and get a bit of a kick out of it. But the reason I mention that is because in amateur dramatics, because it's a much shorter run, that concern about your lines and that level of confidence with the audience, it doesn't reach that peak where you're confident enough to start diverting or diverging from the script, or even wanting to diverge from the script. All you want to do is stay on script. and make sure that the production goes well. But there sometimes has to be improvisation, like when people sometimes do forget lines or forget to come in on a cue or whatever it might be. Or say the wrong thing, and you do have to kind of slightly adjust for that, but it's never too much of an adjustment.
Another area of interest and sort of bouncing off that, you do have to stick to your script quite a lot in amateur dramatics and over the few nights, and I can manage it does get a bit repetitive, and it's quite difficult to learn the lines. So we've talked about sort of the benefits of going to see amateur dramatics, but what would you say are the benefits of being a part of a performance? I mean, I assume, and you included, everyone who's involved with amateur dramatics really tends to have a full-time job on top of it. So it's quite a commitment, over those weeks to dedicate yourself to a performance. So what would you say is the kick people are getting out of being a part of it?
Well, I think, I think there are a number of different things that people get out of it. First and foremost, I guess, let's face it, we are social animals, aren't we, humans? We like to socialise.
Yeah.
And to socialise is in some ways a skill, and the more you're able to socialise with different people in different situations, the more you develop that skill, and by extension, arguably, the more successful and fulfilled you are as a person. Now, I know talking a bit philosophically there, but still in all, I think that's a worthwhile thing to sort of highlight. So there's that element to it. But in terms of what else you get out of it, obviously, let's face it, one of the biggest primary motivators is the enjoyment factor. I said that amateurs, you do something for the love of it. Well, and you mentioned before about stage fright and what have you, and the anxiousness and the nervousness, or rather. And so yeah, there is that. But then when you're on stage and it's going well, and you're acting well, and you're in the part, and you're kind of in the zone, and everybody's acting well around you, and the audience are responding to it well, and that's a fantastic feeling. That's just a great feeling. That really does transport you from the reality of everyday existence. Not to say that existence is any way bad or anything, but it transports you from one reality to a completely different reality, which becomes more real because you're actually playing it out. You're doing it, and you're getting a kick from it. So you're getting the reactions from the audience and from the people around you. So that's an immense benefit because of the way you feel afterwards and when you're doing the performances. Other than that, you've got the camaraderie. I said about socialising with people, and that's one point. But as part of that, you've got a camaraderie with the people that you're working with. You're all this thing the government sort of say sometimes, and they've been saying it a bit recently with the COVID thing, but they were saying it in terms of when we were in austerity measures, we're all in it together sort of thing. Well, that's very true of groups of people who were involved in many different endeavours, and obviously amateur dramatics included. There is a small group of you, relatively, you're involved in something that you hope will be successful, but you don't know whether it's going to be, so there's a challenge there. You each need to play a part. You've got to roll your sleeves up and get on with it. Quite often you've got to do a number of other things as well, even when you might be, even if you're the lead actor, you might be involved in painting the sets or selling tickets or publicity and marketing for the production, and indeed, I was on the committee for the players. So this is the committee is the sure, don't mean to patronise your listeners, but the committee is the small group of people from the wider membership that basically manage the group. So you might be involved in that and involved in managing the society as well as the particular production. So there are benefits as well as burdens, I guess, or obligations, to put it a better way, involved in amateur dramatics.
I don't want to put words in your mouth as well, but if I had to add to your benefits too, I think it's also, if you are sort of on stage, and it sort of gives you that ability to maybe pay homage to performances or actors that you personally admire. I mean, in your case, you've done sort of a script writing thing to Sherlock Holmes, putting him in one of the stories, as you're a big fan of Jeremy Brett and Sherlock. And on top of that too, you've also done your performances, your sort of cabaret performances as Noel Coward. So I suppose also, not only is it the entertainment value of playing someone else and knowing that everything's going well, but also that ability to pay homage to people which have maybe influenced your own interests within the acting realm.
Yeah, no, I agree, and in many ways, when you're playing a character, I think there's very little in the world that's original. So so the influences that you've got, even if they're subconscious, they will make their way into your performances. So in terms of the Sherlock Holmes thing, I was influenced by the way Jeremy Brett played Sherlock Holmes, which was that very successful series quite a number of years ago. And that play that I wrote, because I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, I read all the stories several times. So I put this play together, I produced it, I acted in it, and obviously I wrote the script. So, yeah, and it was really successful, won awards at the national, there's a big association called NODA, which is an affiliation of thousands of different amateur dramatic societies across the country, and they do their own award ceremonies and all this sort of stuff, and your productions get judged. So Sherlock Holmes was nominated for Best Play of the Year, which is back in 2017. We went to a big award ceremony and at the Hilton Hotel, and
Wow.
we won a number of awards. We were nominated in a number of different categories. So we won for Best Director, so the person, John Ellis it was, directed that. I won an award for Best Script because I'd written the script, and that was an award that they'd never given out before because people don't generally write the scripts.
Yes.
They generally acquire them, from existing scripts. So I won the best script, and we won a number of other awards for that particular show as well. So yeah, you're right. It gives people an opportunity to write about or perform or direct or get involved in one way or another. The sorts of interest areas that they've got. I mean, the Noel Coward thing, I did that, as you know, Ben, because you helped me with it, didn't you?
Yeah, I was part of it doing the sound and all that.
Yeah, you're doing all the technical stuff. And I've been knackered with that year. Imagine if I started singing, no music anymore.
yeah. I was ready to be a backup singer in case you fainted as well on stage.
Backup singer, yeah. That would have been good. So I did that. I like Noel Coward, and again, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are thinking, no Lou. if
no Lippmans?
No Lippmans. I haven't got a crinkly bottom. That by the way was a reference to the place that he had. It was a place called Crinkly Bottom that was on his show. But anyway, so
there's a couple of older people I'm sure laughing at that one.
Yeah, maybe. Let's face it, they probably aren't. So I did that. If you look at Noel Coward, people you can look him up and they can see. He had an immense influence in the early part of the 20th century in English and international entertainment as well. So yeah, there are lots of influences. There's abilities to play things that you want to do. One of the just before I finish on this last bit, the kind of more bizarre influences that I had to play a character once, and this character was supposed to be like kind of a bit of a rusty sort of Englishman, kind of a bit rustic and but upper class as well to an extent. When I started developing the character and doing the voice, very soon into it, the voice that sort of came out and the influence that I had was that of there's a character called the Major in Fawlty Towers. So I was actually in some ways kind of taking the Major off in Fawlty Towers, and a few people in the audience said, "You were the Major, weren't you? That's who you were playing. Have you seen Fawlty Towers?" So yeah, that was one of the more bizarre.
I suppose you do, don't you? You take inspirations, like you said, from either subconsciously or consciously from bits and things that you've seen, and I suppose in a way that's rewarding of itself to use those little bits of influences that you've had to turn it into something creative and new.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah, you're quite right. You're on tip 6.
If people are listening to this and they're thinking it all sounds interesting and they've heard about even these potential awards that are available, which also gives people motivation when they're in the field, I suppose, to keep on improving and to keep getting better. What is the route to get into amateur dramatics? Is there like an audition period? Can you go in with any experience at all, or do you need some background? From your knowledge, how is it to get into the field?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think there are plenty of amateur dramatics companies around. So, I think where I am at the moment in Lancashire in England, I think it's one of the most highly populated counties with amateur dramatic societies. So, but they're spread out. I mean, there must be in excess of about 3,000, UK wide. So there'll always be one near you. But in terms of like going along and getting involved, it differs. So sometimes you've got to go along with people that they invite auditions, like open auditions. But most of the time, it's just a matter of just getting in contact with them either through Facebook or website or whatever it is, whatever their contact routes are, and saying that you're interested, then most of these places will welcome you with open arms. And actually, especially if you're younger, because generally speaking, the people that have been involved in amateur dramatics, or let's face it, have got the time, maybe more time to get involved in amateur dramatics, are people who are a bit older. So there's the demographic in amateur dramatics is skewed towards the older end. In our company that I'm in, the long-term players, that's not so much the case. But in other companies, it can be the case. So they are in want of people who are younger, who are enthusiastic, who've got energy, and they've got potential, and they've got ideas and all this sort of thing. So yeah, find out where your closest one is, or where the ones in your area are. Contact them, and I'm sure you'll be invited along at the next opportunity. And don't worry about experience. You can do anything. You don't have to do acting, even if you don't want to do acting, that is. If you do, I'm sure that they'll welcome you. But if you wanted to just paint the set, or sell the tickets, or do the lighting, help do the lighting, or whatever it may be, there will be opportunities.
That's great stuff. I think there's going to be maybe some people now who think that they have something to do once this quarantine's over, something to get into, a new hobby. It's a great time, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it is. Amateur dramatics is I think it's enjoyed a fairly stable, if not an upward curve in terms of its activity. So I don't think it's something that's going to go away anytime soon. And I would encourage anybody that's interested in getting involved to get involved. And also, of course, particularly, I guess, if you are interested in becoming an actor, then this is a great stepping stone, isn't it? Because many different actors, started the time in acting through amateur dramatic companies. David Jason, Del Boy, Ronnie Barker. People might know Ronnie Barker.
Won't be surprised if maybe Ian McKellen, he might have gone down the same route.
Ian McKellen, I'm sure he did, yeah. There's tons of them, absolutely tons of them, that started in amateur dramatic companies and then went on. One important thing though, and probably I'm being a little bit premature, but it shouldn't be expected when you go into amateur dramatics that you're going to be snapped up by any sort of acting talent scout or anything like that. Or I know people aren't necessarily going to think that, but it's important to know that those people aren't there. There aren't talent scouts in the amateur dramatic world that are looking for people to do professional stuff, generally speaking anyway. So you would have to, it's up to you to use that as a stepping stone, really to develop your skills and confidence and abilities, and then you can use that skill set that you've developed to then put that in front of professional companies rather than using amateur dramatics to try to as a direct route into professional acting.
Yeah, I suppose that's an important note to end off, and it is important to know that amateur dramatics is there as a way to, like you said, to gain experience and to try out different roles. I mean, you might have opportunities in amateur dramatics to try a role which you didn't know that you've actually got a great love for. So if there's any road that could be a good way into professional acting, I suppose amateur dramatics is a great one there, especially like you said, if there are a lot of places that want to pick people up, especially if they're younger, to give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Dad, for being on this podcast. It's been great having you.
Hang on. I've got 3 more hours worth of material yet.
I didn't book you for that long.
What's going on?
Yeah. No.
I thought you were going to ask me to sing a song.
Speak to my manager. Speak to my manager.
Right, okay.
No, but no, thanks very much. It's been, I think, it's good for people to hear about amateur dramatics, especially as, perhaps in some circles of the world, it's not as well known, and I think it's good for that knowledge to get out there. And if there are places nearby for people to get involved in, just to give it a go, like you said, there's lots of different things people can get involved in, or even if they just want to watch a show for a cheaper price than they get elsewhere, and maybe something for a little bit different.
Yeah. One last thing to end on, by the way. If you really want to get involved in being on stage but you've got zero talent, try and find a play in which you're able to get naked, because
what?
Because being naked always draws attention. You won't be forgotten. If you get on stage, particularly if the play doesn't actually require you to get naked, but you do it anyway.
You're definitely bringing a spin on the idea that if you're nervous, to picture the audience naked. Your idea is just get naked yourself and see what happens.
Yeah, you'll soon be the centre of attention. Do you know what I mean? Despite you could be the worst actor, you could be standing next to Ian McKellen or whatever, and if you take your clothes off, you're going to get.
There you go. Advice from my father there, everyone.
And just to note, in my next play in October, I'll be doing just that. It's on at the St Andrew's Church Hall.
No one go and see. No one go and see.
No. I'm not going to do that.
Alright, well, yeah. Thanks for that, Dad. Appreciate that.
Alright, buddy. Thanks for the interview. It's been nice talking to you.
No problem. Alright, bye for now.
And thank you for your audience for listening.